Hey everybody, Pat Armstrong here with the latest edition of Increase, the lifestyle vlog for men and the women who love them. Now, I hate to start this video out on a negative, but there is something that happens every day that we never like to face, but we can do absolutely nothing about. In the United States alone, 8,000 people die every day. So based on that statistic, that day is coming to every one of us eventually. But it's not something we need to dwell on or really even think about. What we need to focus on is what are we going to leave behind once that day does come? What will people remember us for? What will be our legacy? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines legacy as something transmitted by or received from an ancestor or predecessor or from the past. So the question is, what are we going to leave to our family members, our co-workers, our friends and neighbors once we're no longer here? Unfortunately, when many people think of a legacy, they think in terms of monetary inheritance. How much money did so-and-so leave for his children or family members? And though that's important, a legacy is so much more than that. A legacy is about a person, a remembrance, or an idea someone passed on to the next generation. It can be personal, it can be financial, it can be a business, it can be spiritual. But the main thing is it's about that person. In the last couple of weeks, I have put out a couple of videos regarding King David. Never did I think it would turn into a series, but today I want to focus on David just one more time and look at the legacy he left, not only for his family and his country, but also for the world. So number one, many of you know this, but David was a music man. David loved the arts, especially music. In 2 Samuel 23 verse 1, the Bible describes David this way: David, the son of Jesse, and the man who was raised up on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, and the sweet psalmist of Israel. David compiled the religious songbook of Israel and wrote most of the songs himself. The Psalms of the Old Testament are still sung today by the Jewish people and religious institutions around the world thousands of years after they were written. Not only was David a songwriter, he was a musician. The Bible names a large number of musical instruments, and many are believed to have been invented by David. Some even the predecessors to many of our musical instruments that we use today. So it's obvious that David passed on his love for the arts to his son Solomon. And because of David's legacy, we still enjoy concerts, musicals, and worship today. Number two, David was a mighty man. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel 17, 34 through 36, "But David said to Saul, 'Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear.'" Now this conversation David was having with King Saul was on the battlefield facing the giant Goliath. No one in the entire army of Israel, including the king, was brave enough to go out and fight this huge enemy. But David's strength was more than just physical. He had a strong faith in God as well. And when he heard the blasphemous things that came out of Goliath's mouth, he got upset and told the king he would go out himself and kill the giant. Now, we're not exactly sure how old David was when this occurred, but being that no one was allowed in the army before his 20th birthday, we do know that David was somewhere in his teens. But still, he didn't let his age stop him. He told the king, I have defeated a bear, I have defeated a lion, and I can kill this guy. And he did. The Bible tells us that David became a captain in Saul's army and surrounded himself with mighty men, which allowed him to win many victories for Israel during the reign of Saul and during his own reign as king, leaving a legacy of peace for Israel and his son Solomon. Number 3, David was a man after God's own heart. This is by far the greatest legacy David could leave. Many people don't know this, but this designation about David was given in 1 Samuel 13, verse 14, by God himself. Despite all the negative things we like to focus on in the life of David, God still and always referred to him as a man after his own heart. You know, it's sad today that when a man or a woman rises to a position of prominence, the first thing that we do is we look for the negative. What can we find that will tear this person or his family apart? And you know, it really doesn't take much. We live in a fallen, sinful world, and we're all going to do wrong. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But instead of looking at the truth that we're all fallible, we want to point the finger and say why someone is not worthy. And now, believe me, I'm not excusing anyone for wrongdoing, but we owe it to everyone the opportunity to make it right. I mean, I'll be honest, I'll admit it, I'm not worthy. I'm blessed every day with things that I didn't work or sacrifice for. I'm blessed with freedom that others paid the price for. I'm blessed with life and the joy of living. And yes, I'm going to make mistakes. And yes, I'm going to do what's wrong. But I'm always going to try to make it right and pick myself up and go on. I'm not going to wallow in self-pity over the wrong I've done in the past. And I'm not going to let others drag me down either. But I'll admit it. I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God. And I hope, despite all my shortcomings, that I can be remembered as a man after God's own heart. Number 4, David is a popular man. 3,000 years after his death, David is still remembered as the greatest king Israel has ever known. The world still sings his songs. They even sing songs about him. We remember the stories of his mighty acts of valor, especially against the mighty giant Goliath. We remember his shortcomings, but we also remember a repentant heart that made things right. David left a great legacy, not only for his family, for his country, but he did indeed leave a great legacy for the world. Before we go today, I want to tell you a little bit about my dad. I am blessed to still have my dad with me. This December, my dad will be 85 years old. And I just talked to him recently, and while we were talking, I reminisced a little bit about his legacy to me. My dad is a music man. Now, he doesn't play an instrument, but much of my musical taste that I gained it from him. I remember growing up, especially during the holidays, and his playing the old LPs of artists like Andy Williams and others from that era. And I also remember standing next to him in church and singing loud and proud. And I tell you, this guy can sing too. And even when we get together, we still sing. My dad is a mighty man. Now, if you would have seen my dad even back in his youth, and you might not have been impressed. He was never one to have rippling biceps or chiseled abs. But Dad was strong. I remember as a boy watching him hoist sides of beef onto his shoulders as he delivered them to grocery stores around town. And not only did he show me his physical strength, but he also showed me a strong work ethic. Now, how my parents did it, raising 7 kids, I'll never know. But I will say this, we lacked for nothing. We were always clothed, we were always fed, and we always had a roof over our heads. My dad is a man after God's own heart. Now, my dad's not a perfect man. In fact, he would be the first to tell you that. But even as a little boy, I saw the change in my dad after he received Jesus Christ as his Savior. Did he become perfect? No. Did he never do wrong again? No. But when Dad sought God's heart, it changed his own heart. And my dad is a popular man. Now, I understand popularity is a relative term, but I could literally take you to hundreds, if not thousands of people who love my dad. And why? Because Dad has blessed many with his talents through the years. Whether it be singing or teaching, whether it be helping someone with a job or a project, or even telling someone about Jesus, Dad has left a legacy not only to his family, but literally to the world. But what about you? When the time comes, what are you going to be remembered for? Now again, I don't want this to be a focus on death, but for me personally, I've got too much living to do. And you know what? So do you. And there may be some of you here that are watching this, and you'd say, Pat, you don't understand. I have been horrible my whole life. And now I'm in my 50s or my 60s or, whatever age. And, what kind of legacy am I going to leave? Well, that's a very good question, because that's up to you. Remember, David didn't let age affect him. As a teenager, he defeated the giant Goliath. And yeah, maybe you are a little bit older, but we're not going to focus on how you started or what you did, but we want to focus more on how you finish. There's a great book, and I believe the author is Steve Farrar. I might have the wrong name for the author, but I know for sure the name of the book is Finishing Strong. And if you've never had an opportunity to read that, I want to recommend that to you. But you can definitely, it doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 at this point, you can still leave a great legacy for those that come behind you. Because again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So now's the time to work on what you're going to leave those who come behind you. What will be your legacy?